stress that I don't consider myself a professional in this. I hope to be. I'm working at it, and so this is practice for me. But I don't consider myself yet well enough. I consider myself well versed enough to be a little dangerous. But looking forward to really diving in more deeply to this, because I do think it's transformative. But the 10,000-foot view,
right.
Human design was created in the late 80s. It basically leverages sort of an engineering mindset, so sort of with a philosophical mindset, with an esoteric. It leverages the I Ching and other aspects of philosophy and sort of spirituality. It also does use the positions of the planets and the moon and so forth to determine your chart to begin with. So there is definitely some overlap with astrology, I would say, in terms of at least in the creation of it. And there's also the belief that the current configuration of the stars as we go through cycles does impact how you function, as how you operate at any given time sphere. So there are some parallels. It is about 60 times less popular than astrology, judging from the subscriptions on the Reddit, the appropriate subreddits. So there's roughly 2 million people who have subscribed to the astrology subreddit, and just in the tens of thousands who've subscribed to human design. But to me, it is a little. I like human design. It resonates more strongly with me than astrology. It's not to say it's better or worse. It just resonates more with my logical, sort of technical mindset, which is interesting because there's a fair bit of woo-woo in this as well. So to suggest somehow that this is scientific fact or it would be disingenuous. And again, it goes back to what I think we maybe mentioned last week, that it's not really about is this true as much as is it useful. And so I would say that to everybody listening, human design. Try it for yourself. Like, don't believe me. This is not a religion. This is not a belief system. This is not any of this. It's an empirical system that you can try. And either it works or it doesn't work. And so I encourage you to try it and see how it helps or not.
One thing I want to throw out there too, just in terms of like my worldview is stuff like this, because I think oftentimes it's like people adopt certain things and it's like, well, I am an astrology person and that's going to be the thing that I build everything on. I really love the practice of layering all of these together and using them within your own worldview. And I think knowing that, like we've talked about biblical womanhood and Christianity a lot, there is nothing about astrology or human design or tarot or any other of these metaphysical practices that stands in contradiction to believing in a higher power or any religion. And so I guess I thought I'd emphasize that too for our listeners, that even as you experiment, if you're like, oh, but it stands in contradiction to my belief system, it may not. Is there a way to make it work? And I think layering it actually brings a lot of its own unique magic. So I'm excited to learn even more about it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I would say even, and maybe other listeners, particularly if they have deconstructed, or maybe they're deconstructing their Christianity or whatever belief system maybe they started with. I know when I was heavily into the church and sort of conditioned by the church, I would have thought looking at something like this was demonic in some senses, or wrong to do. And I actually, coming out on the other side of it, I understand where that feeling comes from. But I would just say I almost think it's easier to try this if you are a Christian or you do have a belief in a God, whether it's the Christian God, Judeo-Christian God, or some other, whatever the case is, because if you can believe that yes, there is a God, there is a creator, then how is it so hard to believe that not only is there a creator, but he's so good, he has a design manual that he's created for you. So I don't think being Christian or believing in a higher power, I actually think that this makes it more relevant in some senses, because if you were purely scientific, purely materialistic, then it would be very hard perhaps to swallow this in terms of, oh, could this possibly be true? So just want to throw that out there for any listeners. I do think it is compatible and in some cases would work hand in hand with a Christian mindset, particularly around areas of prayer or meditation or things you want to focus on in your walk, and bring who you are and understand who you are better so you better understand your spirituality, whatever that is.
Yeah.
So I'm very passionate about this. I hope that comes through to our listeners. And so yeah, with that, let's go ahead and get started. So
Amazing.
we will go through about, I don't know, we'll see how much time we have. I'm going to try to sort of go from the most important to the least important. I will say, like, literally, I think we could take 8 hours to go through this. I mean, there's a lot of, this is a 48-ounce prime rib that we're looking at. This is definitely like a lot here. And so I'm really going to try to focus on the big picture, and maybe with a couple of interesting highlights. But there's a lot more here, and obviously you've looked at your chart before, so you have a stepping off point. But my hope is that this may show you some other areas you might want to take a look at.
Totally. I'm excited.
Awesome. All right, so let's start. So the first thing, 80%. So for the listeners, there's a lot. I mean, you can go down to the minutia, but I would say 80-20, because I'm a big fan of the Pareto principle in terms of 80-20. So what is the 80%? And it comes down to two words, and it's strategy and authority. So and that's what we'll start with, which is our type. So there are 4 or 5, depending on how you want to call it, main types of humans according to human design. And each of these types has a different strategy for dealing with the world. And I think an analogy that might be useful for listeners would be that of different types of vehicles. So I want you to imagine a bicycle, a car, a submarine, and a rocket ship. These are 4 very different types of vehicles. And one is not necessarily better than the other. So there may be times when a bicycle is, if you're in a city with traffic's at a deadlock, a bicycle may be the best way to get around. If you need to go underwater, the other 3 probably aren't going to help you. And if you're in outer space, so each of these vehicles, if you will, these types, is not better or worse or luckier or less lucky than any of the others. They're just different vehicles. And in the same way that you would not take a submarine and put it in outer space and expect it to perform, or take a car and drive it on the bottom of the ocean and expect it to work, we are the same way. We have a specific type that is our way of processing, of working with the world. And human design basically says that everything in life is us making decisions. So every single moment of every single day, we're making decisions, whether we think we are or not. Most of them happen subconsciously. What am I going to have for breakfast? What time am I going to wake up? So life is just this fundamental set of decisions that we make, one after the other after the other. And oftentimes we make decisions in a way that is not according to how we are designed to make decisions. And so as a result, we make often decisions that are not optimal for us. And then we have more stress. We have more frustration. We have more angst. We're not living life in the flow that we would want to. And so what I would suggest is the more you can learn about yourself, so know thyself, the more you can understand how you operate, the more you can get into the flow of life and make these decisions in a manner that is not in your mind, but is according to your type. And so you get more into a flow. And so, if nothing more, knowing your strategy and knowing which is how do you make decisions, and then knowing your authority, which is how do you make those decisions, and what do you rely on in terms of making those decisions. So the strategy and authority are the 2 most fundamental things. So we will spend our time most of the time speaking about that, because if you live your strategy and live in your authority, that is 80% of the battle. Not all of it, but it will make a huge difference in your life. And then once you've seen that difference, then it may encourage you to go a little bit further and see how else can you use this. But so I would start there. So for you, your type, so there are 4 types, 5 depending. So they are the generator, the projector type, the manifestor type, and the reflector type. Now, you'll sometimes hear 5 because generators are broken out actually into 2 categories. There's a pure generator, and then there's a manifesting generator. And there's always argument. How do you keep them separate? Do you not? Both are fundamentally generators. The main difference is the manifesting generator is kind of a bit of a hybrid of a manifestor and a generator. And again, this is not a talk about all the different types. So that is something that if there's interest, we could always talk more about. But that we can put up links here as well for folks to explore. There's places where you can get your own chart for free. And we'll definitely link that up as well so you can understand. But suffice it to say, generators, about 70% of the world is either a generator or a manifesting generator. And you are a generator. You are a pure generator, actually. What does that mean? Well, that means you are naturally equipped or designed with a robust, sustainable life force energy that allows you to deeply engage with whatever tasks and projects that you want to. So generators are the only type who has this robust, sustainable life force energy. Whether you're a manifesting generator or just a pure generator, you have essentially an unlimited supply of energy. Your optimal way of interacting with life is through responding rather than initiating. And that is a key thing. Only manifestors are living according to their design when they initiate things. So your strategy, the words that I would tattoo upon your skull kind of thing is your strategy is always to respond. You are not supposed to initiate things. You may initiate things, but only in response to something else. And in fact, because you're a pure generator type, your optimal way is through response rather than initiating. The second piece is which we'll get to, is your authority, which is a sacral authority. So I think in the past we may have talked a little bit. I may have misspoken, but when we had talked in the past. But your authority is sacral, which is essentially a gut yes/no response. Mm-hmm. And that response is everything in life, every decision in life should go through that gut response. And the thing with the gut, the sacral, is it can only answer yes or no questions. It can only answer binary questions. The sacral, your gut, can't answer, what do I want for dinner? It can answer, do I want Chinese? Do I want to go out? Do I want to stay home? Do I want to DoorDash? Do I want pizza? Yes or no? It can feel that. But if it's like, what do you want to eat? That it's silent because it doesn't have an answer for you because it can only process yes or no. Typically, it may feel like an uh-huh or an uh-uh. Just sort of this little, and you have to listen for it. But it comes from your gut, not from your head. And this yes or no response is very powerful because it's what's going to drive you towards satisfaction and away from frustration. And so as a generator, okay, so you know how in a car, right, there's a check engine light, right? It'll come on, and it could be for 100 different reasons, right? But you see this light come on, what does it tell you? It says, well, check the fucking engine, right? I mean, that's
right.
I don't know what's wrong. It doesn't tell you there's 100 engine codes or 150 engine codes. But figure it out. Take it to somebody who knows, notice it essentially, and do so, and pay attention to it. Is what I would say. I mean, now I know a lot of us probably ignore the check engine light. I know I have been guilty of that. But your check engine light, Reese, is always going to be frustration. So when you feel frustration, that means that's your check engine light from an emotional perspective or from a feeling perspective is if you are feeling frustrated, that is your signal that something there's some aspect of your life, typically maybe what you're feeling frustrated about, but things can bleed over too.
Right.
We're complex human beings. But if you're feeling frustration, there's an aspect of your life where you're likely not living according to your design. And so it's not to judge that. I mean, we all we all don't live according, nobody lives according to the design 24/7, and it is a practice. But the when you feel frustration, it is a clear-cut signal to you to check what's going on. It's a check engine light, check frustration light. What is the frustration? So what are some of so let me stop there first of all. Any questions about that? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It totally does. And I think, last week before we hit record on discussing your birth chart, we were talking a little bit about this recent decision I made to move back to the States. And I think so often I will second guess these gut feelings, right? This and feeling. Because when I get a really strong one, it's like it's overwhelming and I've got clarity, and it is the frustration makes a lot of sense because I've talked a little bit before about how anger is not an easy emotion for me to tap into. And I think that there is this feeling though of like, well, when something's wrong, it's like, I'm not mad at anything or at the situation or at myself. I'm frustrated at the lack of flow. It's like something isn't right. There's friction. So no, it absolutely makes sense.